because I'm very excited to talk to Eric in Ohio. Eric, what is on your mind this afternoon?
How are you today? It's good to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. What can we do for you?
I've been enjoying your conversation, and I've got to say, I can't agree with you more that we ought to believe more in the things that are testable and repeatable, shouldn't we?
Sure.
And I say that as a theist, believe it or not. But the reason that I wanted to talk to you, I appreciate your scientific perspective on things. And my perspective didn't start out scientific, but it did end up with a good scientific base. And I've gone through everything that I believe now and weighed it against the things that I used to believe with science. And I'm very happy. I'm a very happy theist now. I'd like to share my perspective with you.
Yeah, please.
The way I see things, one of two things have to be absolutely true. Either there's always been a God, or there's always been a universe or a little pinprick that evolved into a universe in one form or another. One of these things have to be true. And
I don't know that I can co-sign that it has to be one or the other, but that's okay. Let's just keep moving. Tell me more.
Okay. Well, one of the two things has to be true then. Everything that sprang out that we have today, that we see today, had to come from one or the other. So I look at things and I ask myself, can a dead universe evolve life and consciousness? And I look at the things, I look at science, and I don't see where we've ever been able to produce it in a lab or ever seen it, observed it coming in naturally forming. So
sure. I mean, we have not been able to replicate or truly understand abiogenesis. I think that's, while a very broad statement, something we can largely all agree on, but does that mean that it's impossible or that it's never happened before? You recognize that those are not the same claim.
Well, if you'll bear with me 1 second, you'll see exactly where I'm going with this. The truth is, we've tried many times to replicate it, and it's failed. And I believe that the falsification procedure is what separates science from science fiction or imagination from real science. The falsification procedure, actual testing, that's the most important step in science. But then let's look at something else, okay? So if there is no abiogenesis, if we don't see a cell forming naturally, then that would disannul life ever arising at all, because all life is cellular. Now, step two, let's give us that miracle of one cell just falling together all by itself, okay? Let's give us that one miracle. We've got that one cell. Now, our next step in evolution is this. That single cell has to become a multicellular organism, and that never happens in science. We never observe it in a laboratory. We never observe it in nature. Now, there are times...
Right, so things that could possibly happen are things that we have not been able to make happen or observe happen. It's still the same fallacy that we're pushing up against.
Well, you see, this is falsifiability. This is science. This is testing science. Okay.
Yes, this is testing whether or not this particular procedure will have this particular result. And so far, we have had a number of procedures, and we have never had the result of creating a single cell organism out of, quote, nothing. We're being very reductive here, but I think you and I are on the same page with all of that. Our ability to demonstrate our understanding of how this has happened does not indicate that it cannot happen or has never happened.
Okay, I'll grant you that, but bear with me just a little further. I'm taking us now from a single cell organism to a multicellular organism, because that's step two in the process of evolution. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is we never observed this either. neither can we make it happen in a laboratory. Now, what we do observe, and some people have misunderstood this, we do observe single-cell organisms replicating over and over and over again and colonizing together, not creating a multicellular organism, but a colony of single-cell organisms.
Sure.
And that's been mistaken for the same thing as creating a multicellular organism, which it isn't. So we never observe that happening. So step 2 of evolution, I don't think ever occurs. We don't see it in the laboratory. We don't see it in nature.
Right. So there is a gap in our knowledge about how these things might proceed. 500 years ago, there were gaps in our knowledge about the electromagnetic spectrum, about the existence of radio waves and things like that. And yet now we recognize that not only can we create radio waves, but that they are a natural phenomena that exists all over the universe. The lack of us having knowledge of something doesn't indicate that that something can't or won't or has never existed. This is very, very important, whether we're talking about evolution or any other idea. What you're seemingly doing here is taking all of those gaps and squeezing in a God concept to help fill them.
No, not at all, not at all. And let's be
okay. Help walk me through it. What's the difference?
Of evolution now. This is all testability. Okay, it's all testable, and these tests have all failed. That's the point. Now let's look at a couple more things. You might
are there going to be a third example that has the same problem as the first two? Because having 17,000 problems or examples that all have the same problem still means that you have nothing. That's why I'm kind of wanting to address the problem that I'm seeing.
I'm almost okay. Well, let me go just a little further.
Okay, just a little further then.
When we look at transitional fossils, okay, I have nearly every evolutionist I know point to transitional fossils and common ancestors as proof for evolution. For instance, they'll look at the DNA of the chimpanzee and the DNA of the human being, and they'll say, well, it's obvious that we have a common ancestor. Now, that's fine if they want to believe that. They also say all fossils are transitional, and it's fine if they want to believe that. But there's two problems to this. Neither one have been tested. For instance, if you want
Eric, I feel I'm sorry for jumping in. I feel it's time that I jump in here because I'm not a biologist. I don't know anything about biological science at all. So I'm not going to argue with you on any of these points because it's not my field of study. The thing that is my field of study is philosophy.
Learn it a little bit.
Eric, I've no intention of learning it. It's not my field of study. I have fields of study that I don't feel I need to add a further one on to. There are other people who deal with this kind of stuff. I'm not that person. I do deal with philosophy. And one thing you've done here, Eric, one thing you've done here is you've jumped. You've set up a false dichotomy to begin with, which is that it's either God or this universe which has come into existence from nothing, which you've not mentioned any possibility of it being an eternal universe. That's your first mistake here, because you've not demonstrated this dichotomy. It is a false dichotomy. The second thing you've done is you've said, I have problems with evolution and abiogenesis, and they may be legitimate problems, they may not be. But even if we just say, right, look, Eric, I'm willing to agree with you. Evolution and abiogenesis, none of it has any evidence whatsoever. That still doesn't get us to God. So we're not giving scientific evidence for God here. All you're saying is that you disagree with these other ideas. What is the, you called up with this idea, this claim that there's scientific evidence for God. What is the scientific evidence for God that you have? Because simply saying you don't agree with other things is not giving God scientific evidence. Eric, are you still with us?
So the point is, yes, sir. And I will bring this right back around to God in just a moment. I'm just finishing out this last point. When we say that we have a common ancestor, the problem is because of the observation of the DNA similarity.
Eric, I'm not saying we've got a common ancestor. I've already said to you, I am willing to agree with you that we have no evidence for abiogenesis or evolution at all. I agree with you. Yeah, let's say that. We have simply no evidence for either of those things. So what is the evidence for God?
Okay. Pardon me, but I would love to finish my points. I'm not interrupting you, sir.
No, I'm interrupting you because it's really, really important that I interrupt you, because we're not this. If you want to talk about abiogenesis being false, if you want to talk about evolution being false, you are more than welcome to write a paper demonstrating these things as false, giving you evidence as to why they are false, and getting the majority of biologists on the planet to peer review your stuff and say, Eric is absolutely spot on the money. We're going to reject evolution. We're going to reject abiogenesis. That's fine. But, I'm telling you, I agree with you. You don't need to finish your point. It's pointless finishing your point because I want to hear your evidence for God, not your evidence against something else that I already agree with you on.
You're about to hear it.
Then present it,
please.
Sir, please.
But I think it's interesting that you don't want me to give this point. I think
we've heard so many versions of these scripts, and when you're not having a conversation with us, it does feel like you're reading from a script. When you're like, hold on, I don't care about anything you just said, I have one more point to make. It makes us feel like you're not having a conversation with us, and we're very glad that you're here to help us through some of these ideas, to help us understand your point of view. But please, let's not talk about it any further. Present for us the scientific evidence that you have for the existence of God. We're very interested to hear from you.
Let's really not talk about my point any further. Are you serious? The point is, you see, we've been brainwashed. And the brainwashing is this. We're told that we have all this evidence for evolution when none of it has been falsified.
Eric, do you have any evidence for God or not? Because you're starting to grate on me just a little bit now. You've told me you're going to present me this evidence for the past 3 times I've spoken to you, and then you've just gone straight back into your spiel about evolution.
Yes, I'm just about there.
Great. Let's stop being just about there. Get to the starting line, fire the starter's pistol, and give it to us. Yes, please, sir.
This point leads to my next one. You see, we don't have the DNA of the common ancestor to test that theory, nor do we have the DNA of any of the transitional fossils like the Archaeopteryx or the theropod dinosaurs said it evolved from, to put these things to the test.
Sure. I mean, you're dramatically oversimplifying the field of evolutionary biology, but again,
no.
Can you stop criticizing evolution and start building a case for the existence of God? Or is that not where any of this is headed? Are all of these points just to say that evolution as we understand it is incorrect?
Yes.
Or did you call it because you had some scientific evidence for the existence of God?
Yes. Now I'm about to present the scientific evidence for God. But
That's the 5th time you said that, sir. I very much don't mean to be harsh with you, but I have to point out that's a little bit frustrating. If you have it, please share it with us now as the next thing that you say, please.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to put us on the same page to agree first, see if we agree, you and I, that there is no DNA that's been testable to prove that any fossil is truly transitional. We agree?
No, I'm not there with you, but for the sake of the argument, for the sake of getting to the point, let's go ahead and fast forward through it.
Okay, well, which fossil would you say we've proven is transitional?
Jesus Christ, Eric, please.
Do you have an example of one?
Eric, get to the evidence for God.
Of one?
Please, just give us the evidence for God.
Yes. Biogenesis and plasma universe. Biogenesis and plasma universe. You see?
What do you mean by biogenesis and plasma universe?
Biogenesis. Well, I'm getting to that. Whereas we don't have any proof that even one fossil is transitional because we don't have the DNA of these fossils to prove it. And the DNA that we do have, for instance, one might say that Neanderthal is a transitional fossil, when the very definition of species proves that Neanderthal is the same species.
Eric,
I feel like you're very dramatically misinterpreting common evolutionary theory. You keep getting hung up on this notion of transitional fossils or transitional species. And I think that even a very fundamental understanding of evolution would tell you that, Neanderthals didn't evolve into humans, that instead Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthal existed around the same time, and that there was some interbreeding and we have picked up some traits from them, but that even if we came dramatically after them, they didn't evolve into us, they simply were. And then some members of their species mutated and continued on and so forth. But it's not a Pokemon that levels up as time goes on. And again, we're hearing you bash evolution, and that's fine. Like, we can have that conversation, but I'm trying not to push back on everything that you say that seems irrational about evolution, because I'm so much more interested in your final point, which is my scientific evidence for the existence of God. If that's not your final point, then I've dramatically misunderstood what we're doing here. And if it is your final point, please don't keep us waiting any longer. Say that thing, please.
My point was to compare the two. My point was to compare the two and to show that you don't have... What I was saying about Neanderthal is that we are the same species. By the definition, 300 years ago, we are the same species. Because we've interbred or multibred.
That's my head bouncing off my desk in utter frustration. Please, sir, if you do not mind, I would implore you to get to the fucking evidence for God, because you are really getting on my titties, sir. I don't want to hear another word about evolution, transitional fossils, or that other fucking thing you were talking about, abiogenesis. Please just tell us about your evidence for God.
Yeah, Eric, in case you're missing it, our central point here is that saying that the current conveying operating theory that most of science relies on in order to understand a concept, even if you take that and destroy it and say that it makes absolutely no sense, that doesn't do anything to prop up another theory. We are all looking for the best theory, the best organizing principles for how we understand reality. Yeah. And if you have one that's better than the existing one, focus on that. Focus on putting forward, I believe that God created the universe and all of the creatures in it because of, rather than all of these people who say that God couldn't do it are crazy because they can't reproduce all of these theories that they have or all these ideas that they have. I have to say that I am not an evolutionary biologist, but your understanding of evolution feels really weak and does contradict with a lot of the ideas that I am able to wrap my head around. I've tried to highlight some of those as we've gone along, but none of this seems to be getting us to, hey, I have an explanation for why life exists, or I have an explanation for where the universe came from. So in absence of that, I'm struggling to understand where this conversation might go, or how much more time we're really able to give it before I give poor Richard an aneurysm.
Well, I just find it really, really funny that this bothers you so much. And
It's not your ideas, Eric, that bother us. It really isn't. We have heard so many more awful and disgusting ideas than the ones that you're presenting. And when I say that is, I don't find your ideas compelling, but I don't find them deeply upsetting. If you had called in to say that there are no transitional species and therefore there should be no intermingling among the races or something like that, calls which I've taken, by the way, that would upset me. That would be a, quote, moral evil that I might get worked up against. We are not upset because what you are saying is terribly inflammatory. We are frustrated because it is demonstrably inaccurate and out of step with the scope of modern science and with just good logical reasoning. And every time we try to point that out to you, you don't seem to absorb it or take it in. So I understand that, yes, maybe there is a little bit of friction in the air, but I want you to know it's not because you called. It's not because we disagree with you. It's because we don't seem to be having a conversation with you where we're getting through to you or where you're really taking in some of the things that we're trying to express as concerns.
Well, you keep telling me that I'm wrong about something, but you can't show me where I'm wrong. None of this stuff is testable, and it hasn't been tested. And the things that have been tested have failed. Now, that's the end of my conversation with that part of it. I'm going to
cool.
But
move on.
First, is there any? You said what I said was demonstrably wrong. Can you show me the one thing that I've said that is demonstrably wrong?
Yes,
yeah, I mean,
it's a dichotomy. Sorry, Christy, but I need to jump in here.
Yeah.
Because it is a dichotomy that there is either God, it's a false dichotomy that there is either God or this universe which came from nothing. That was the very first thing you said. That was wrong. And I want to address that because I am not a biologist. I do know about philosophy, and I know a little incy-wincy, tiny little layman's bit about the universe as well. So I'd much rather talk about that and get evidence for God.
I didn't say anything came from nothing. I said one of two things have to be true. Either everything came from a universe or everything came from God.
Or everything came from some third thing that none of us here know about or understand. It's the same flaw that comes in when you say, well, we've tested it and it didn't work. I mean, we're just finding different ways to not make a light bulb. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to make a light bulb.
What third thing? If you can't put a third thing on the table, then it's not a false dichotomy.
Right. Again, so what you're saying is because there is a gap in our knowledge, because there is something that we do not know, that it can't be true. And that's the flaw in your thinking here. That's what I pointed out maybe a few minutes into this conversation, that you can't just say, well, because we don't know something, therefore God is the only answer. There are so many things that we don't know. And the best way to demonstrate that is to imagine yourself calling a YouTube talk show in the 1500s, whatever that version is. Imagine yourself going into a tavern in the 1500s, you yourself, like modern you with all of your modern understanding, and saying to them, well, there's clearly no God because we can't recreate the creation of life. And they'd be like, yeah, you still can't do that 500 years in the future? And you could talk through it all, but imagine what we might be able to learn in 500 more years. Perhaps abiogenesis cannot be recreated. Perhaps the scale and scope of it is too massive for it to ever be something that we could recreate in a laboratory. Perhaps a pixie came out of nowhere and just shit out a universe, and now we're all here. I can't demonstrate or prove or test any of these ideas, but I can study the hard work of incredibly brilliant people who have worked very hard to take all of the bits of information, all of the evidence that does exist, and form a cohesive narrative around it, and then watch as other people tear down that narrative and add to it. And then new information comes to light, and we build and we build and we build. And at the moment, we have come to a particular understanding of the origin of species that, by the way, doesn't really line up with the one that you're tearing down. None of this gets us to God.
Go ahead. You can calm down. You can calm down. Listen, all I'm saying is you can't demonstrate one thing that I said that's wrong. That's important to remember now.
It's important for you to take in that we have done that again and again and again. Just to put it in a super quick soundbite, anytime you tell me it has to be this or that, and then I put forward, or it could actually be some third thing that none of us have come to, that is me telling you that you are committing a logical fallacy, or in other words, that you are wrong. And we have said that many times. And if you disagree with that, okay, you can disagree with us when we tell you that you're wrong or show you how you're wrong. But to continue to insist that we haven't pointed out any flaws, it's just not accurate.
I believe you're special pleading. So we can disagree on that. That's okay. That's all right. But now I'm about to turn it around on God, and let's look at science now from a different point of view.
Oh my goodness, you're buttering that biscuit again. All right, for the 8th time, I will bite. Show us God.
Okay. What does the scriptures tell us? Genesis chapter 1, where God brings forth the animals. How does he do it? He brings forth the animals, and they do what? They bring forth after their own kind. Let's look at biogenesis. Do you know what biogenesis is?
Are you meaning to say abiogenesis?
No, it's meaning biogenesis, and meaning life from life, meaning God gave life to things. That's what he means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biogenesis is an observation that we observe. Louis Pasteur observed this.
Yes. No, I understand the distinction. It was just in the context of the conversation. I wanted to make sure with our shaky phone lines and everything else that you were intending to say biogenesis. I appreciate the concept.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So let's look at this now. Everything brings forth after its own kind. Now, compared to abiogenesis, that things just fall together and evolve into everything that we see today.
I mean, we have to really play around with so many of these words. What does it mean for something to reproduce after its own kind? I mean, where do we get broccoli and cauliflower from if everything looks the same as it's always looked?
I didn't say everything looks the same as it's always looked. Some things, everything adapts, okay?
Right, sure.
So
Did God bring everything about after his own kind?
What's that now?
Did God bring about life after his own kind?
What was your question? I'm sorry.
Did God bring about life after his own kind?
Myriads of life. God brought forth myriads of life, okay?
Was it after his own kind?
It is. But this is...
What was it after his own kind, please, sir?
Kind of after his own kind.
What do you mean by kind of after his own kind? Was it after his own kind or not after his own kind?
He said, let us bring forth man in our own image.
Did God produce God?
So,
did God produce God?
We find that in the preamble. Now, if you don't want to hear my argument, that's okay.
I do want to hear your argument. I'm asking you questions to direct your argument. Did God produce God?
Okay, then give me a moment. After I've laid it out, feel free to ask me anything you want to ask.
I'm asking you now, sir. Did God produce God?
Well, you're going to have to wait for your answers.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you now. You're going to have to answer the question, I'm afraid. Did God produce God? You have just claimed that the Bible specifically told us life comes after its own kind. You, sir, are on the cusp of disproving your own argument. Did God produce God?
No.
No, he didn't. So the Bible is wrong. So why are you appealing to the Bible?
And they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen to me. You see, God is God. God can do anything that he chose to do.
Oh, can he now? That's very interesting. Could you tell me, sir, what reality is?
See, you don't think. Sir, Grow up, would you please?
I am grown up, and I've had these conversations many, many times. That's why I'm not falling into silly, childish traps. You've just disproven your own argument.
Civilized and learn how to have a conversation, sir.
I'm allowing you to have a conversation, sir. I'm asking you direct questions. Now, would you mind answering the question, did God produce God?
Do you believe that responsible is transitional, sir?
Did you? Right, sir, you are really, really right. Listen, this is going to work one of two ways. You are either going to comply and we're going to have an actual conversation, or I'm going to mute you and I'm going to talk over you, put all my points out, which you keep interrupting, which absolutely, and I'll be really, really polite as I possibly can here, fucking tear every single one of your shitty philosophical and scientific claims apart.
Listen,
so you've got two choices. We can have a nice conversation, or I'll just put you on mute and I'll just talk. Which is your choice, sir?
I'd like to point out there is a hypothetical third option here where the internet just stops working or the Earth gets struck by an asteroid before this conversation ends. You never know when there might be a third option. Sorry, just wanted to point that idea out.
Okay.
Did God produce God, man after his own kind, life after his own kind?
Yes.
Yes, he did. So we bear the same attributes as God.
What does this mean?
Do we bear with the same attributes as God?
Who, mankind?
The life that God created, does it bear the same attributes as God?
Mankind or all life?
Any life. Does any life that God created bear the same attributes as God himself?
All life has souls. All life was given a soul.
Yes. Is God's attributes having a soul? Is that the entirety of God's attributes? So you don't believe that God is all powerful or maximally powerful or all loving or all knowing? You don't believe any of those things about God, which none of life on earth holds those attributes.
Well, not even all of God holds all of those attributes.
So what are the attributes that you believe God holds that make God God?
When you say God, do you mean the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit?
I'm saying the God that you believe in, sir. The God that you believe in, what attributes make that being God? Specifically, God.
Okay. Well, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit make God God.
The Father, the Son.
Is that what you're saying? The attributes of God
I can cut through a little bit here. Eric, I believe what Richard is trying to establish is that you said that each creature recreates after its own kind because God created it that way. You also said that God created man after its own kind. And we're trying to figure out how you're saying that this piece of ancient poetry that would disprove evolution, or that would be a better theory, or that would replace evolution, actually is even internally consistent when we consider the idea that God did not recreate us after his own image or after his own kind, or did he? Like, what are the criteria for that?
No, God didn't create a bunch of little gods, okay? But everything he created to bring forth after its own kind.
This might be some of that special pleading that we talked about earlier, but in any case, we have failed to disprove evolution, and more importantly, we have failed to prove evidence of God. And I think that next time you give us a call, I would encourage you to choose one of those missions and not both. And to narrow the scope a little bit so that you can feel very comfortable and confident that the thing that you are ready to say is a thing you are absolutely assured of and well-versed in and able to very efficiently explain to us. Again, disproving evolution does not prove God. Disproving evolution is far from what happened here. Richard, is there anything else that you want to make sure to hit on?
I think, look, before we get to the evolution thing, because I'm not, as I said at the start, I'm not a biologist. I don't particularly enjoy talking about evolution and abiogenesis. It's not my field of study at all. When I have seen it, it has been from places like the Creation Institute. And when I've read their papers on the subject, what they do is they always attack evolution or abiogenesis. Never, ever do they seek to try and prove that God exists. And this is very disingenuous to me. You don't need to attack. And here's the problem. Here's why. Let's say that we don't just have, as very often in science, we don't just have a single theory of evolution and how life evolved or how life formed on this planet. Let's say that we have 100 different theories. Now, the way we get our theory into being accepted is not by going through each one of those hundreds, possibly even thousands of alternative theories and breaking down what you think the problem is with them. The way we get our theory as the accepted theory is by showing that it works, it is repeatable, and it has explanatory power. And what this does is it gives the people in your field of study the means to go out and replicate this and to test this for themselves and to say, yeah, actually, this works and it has explanatory power. So you don't need to spend hours and hours and hours trying to disprove something you don't agree with. All you have to do is show that there is a strong theory out there, and by default, that thing that you don't agree with will not be accepted anymore. And, this is what happens all the time in science. And it happens from the tiny littlest mundanest things to the great, great big theories, is people come up with stronger ideas. And those stronger ideas are tested and found to be better than the competitors. And this is why I don't hold, Eric. It's not something against you, but I don't hold with this idea of, well, I don't like the idea of that, so I'm going to pull it apart, because that proves nothing. That doesn't prove God. We've talked about two different areas today, which I would have loved to have a conversation on. We've talked about philosophy and the universe, and we could have had great, great conversations on those roads, but just wanted to return to this thing, which is throwaway. It doesn't matter in the conversation about whether God exists. It really doesn't matter whether evolution or abiogenesis are true. When we're talking about whether God exists, what matters is that the God hypothesis is tested and shown to be the strongest idea out there. And you failed to do that.
Well, that's because you won't let me. Look, the first thing I proved was you don't have any credible evidence for either abiogenesis or evolution to even throw on the table. Everything that you say is...
You may have heard a little beep there, sir, and that was me muting you, because I've just given you a lengthy explanation as why I do not give a fuck about either of those things, and the first thing you returned to was that. I'm going to leave it in Christy's hands whether he unmutes you or ends the call, because, frankly, I am done with this conversation.
Yeah, I think I'm there as well. I do want to say again, Eric, I know I've tried to kind of sum up this call a handful of times, and I really want you to kind of grapple with this very core notion that disproving one idea does not imply this other idea. I would also just kind of highlight that your disproving process maybe lacked some meaningful rigor, some understanding of what it means to have a transitional fossil and, some of these other points. But regardless, I do very much appreciate your willingness to talk to us and to work through all of this. I want very much for you to understand that your ideas are not inflammatory, even if a little bit your behavior kind of is. And I hope that you're willing to go back and rewatch this conversation and just recognize the ways that you maybe failed to address some of our concerns and to carry a back and forth conversation with us, which is really what we're here to do, rather than listening to you read a script or force us to work through a certain series of points. With all of that being said, very glad to have gotten to talk to you and to highlight some of our misgivings with your thinking on all of this. And yeah, just very much appreciate the bravery it takes to have this kind of conversation. So with that, Richard, you and I can certainly move on, but you know, it was kind of a good time.
Yeah, you are way too nice, Christy.